Hello and welcome back to the Sandbeast YouTube channel. As always, my name is David Foxen, and before we start, please do not forget to subscribe and like this video for more IT asset management content. Today's topic, we are looking at the 5 reasons as to why open source software is going to play a bigger role in the ITAM world and ITAM managers' responsibilities in the future. So let's get straight into it. First reason as to why I personally believe that open source is going to play a bigger role in IT asset management and organizations as a whole, and that's the increased reliance that enterprise organizations have on open source software or parts of open source software. We had an interview recently with Rebecca Horton as part of our big interview series, and she really opened up my mind to just how much open source software there are within organizations. And I feel like it's something that ITAM managers don't prioritize simply because they've obviously got the complexities of licensable software, software in the cloud, they've got hardware, etc., all the processes, technologies that underpin ITAM as well. But there is so much open source software within organizations, and that continues to grow. We've seen a number of case studies this year alone where organizations have moved away from commercial licensable software from the likes of your Microsoft products, moving to open source alternatives, including open source operating systems, open source communications, like replacing Microsoft Teams with an open source version of it. There's just so many options out there now to replace licensable software with open source. And with dwindling software budgets are decreasing, but you're expected to do more. Open source software could be a really good way of spending and reducing that software budget while still providing the applications and the products required by the end users to meet requests. You've got lots of open source software on the end user side of things, but also in the infrastructure side of things as well. There's things like Putty out there, there's Git, there's all these kind of open source frameworks that help developers, that help coding, help build other bits of software, but are also on servers and within the infrastructure space that is seen as a better option for that organization rather than buying something that's commercially licensed and will potentially cost the organization lots of money. The organization then starts to actually rely on this open source software. It becomes a key strategic bit of software for that organization, very much like licensable software would be. And then you have to start treating it a bit differently. You know, what happens if something goes wrong with it? How do you manage the requests? How do you manage the life cycle? How are you tracking the updates that are recurring with this? Do you then have to create new software packages for users to deploy it? Does it then require a change request to update it on a server? So many things that you have to think about as you become more and more reliant on open source software, especially within the data center and infrastructure space. And it is creeping in a lot over there. Again, like we said in our interview with Rebecca Horton, I'll put a link in the description. There is so much open source software in the infrastructure space, on the servers, etc. And there's also open source software creeping into the AI and the cloud space. But that's a spoiler alert because we'll touch upon that one later on. Number 2 is the open source licensing complexities. Open source is not always free. There are occasions when you start using different features or functions within that open source software that starts requiring a license. This can be, and has been for a long time, a big gotcha, especially with freeware, not talking about open source, but with freeware, free downloads and stuff like that. You download it, you suddenly see that it says free for personal use, not for corporate use, not for using within your organizations, etc. There's a lot of open source software where that's a very similar mantra as well. Certain areas of the software may be open source, but if you wish to use that in your own software and resell it or use it within your organization, there might be a fee and a license associated to it, or even a different version of the open source software that may also then require a license. Sometimes this isn't really obvious, so ITAM professionals, we need to be doing our research, we need to be doing our homework to validate which areas of the software is covered by open source and which is covered by a separate license type. You can very quickly go from being nice and compliant, happy days, saving money by switching commercialized software over to freeware and open source, and then realizing that actually the areas of open source that you need to buy a license for it because the product that you actually need is not open source. It is actually licensed And then you have to go through that whole cycle again of budget request. Yes, I know we said we moved to open source, but we didn't do our homework, and actually we need a license, this particular license, to be able to run that in a commercial organization. And you go back to senior management leadership with your tail between your legs. So yeah, please make sure whenever you're looking at open source software that it is truly open source, that you're doing your research, you're doing your homework, you're understanding how the business and the organization and the stakeholders within your teams that are actually going to be using this software, how they are using it, why they're using it, where they are using it, so that ITAM has that information, has that knowledge in order to make an informed, concise decision that yes, we are only using the open source version, or no, we can only use the open source version in these scenarios, but over here, we're going to need to buy the licensable version. So number 2 is the licensing complexities that comes with open source, believe it or not. And again, I keep mentioning it, but it was a really great interview. Link in the description. But that open source interview with Rebecca Horton digs way deeper into the licensing complexities of open source software. So I highly recommend you go and have a look at that after this video. Watch this one first, then go watch that one. Reason number 3 is the information security risks and open source software. A lot of open source software is super secure. It is run by really smart, intelligent people or companies that are regularly patching, regularly updating, making sure that their open source software is not going to become a backdoor for nasties, for hackers, for data leaks, etc. But then there are other open source developers that maybe aren't quite as vigilant and don't have their software quite locked down as it should be. If you then install it within your organization, that could be opening a whole can of worms and a lot of issues for your organization, for ITAM, but also for your information security teams. So that relationship between ITAM and InfoSec it should already be quite strong within your organization. For other reasons, such as general ITAM processes around laptops going missing, getting stolen, being lost, etc. But also on onboarding new software, offboarding software, looking at vulnerabilities, looking at compliance and security risks with your existing commercialized software. You need to be doing the same with your open source. Just because it's open source and it's free does not mean that it doesn't come with risks. Open source software should be following your software onboarding processes, which includes people like your legal teams and your information security teams to review whether that software is okay for deployment. We're happy to use it within our organization from an InfoSec perspective, or whether they turn around and say, no, it's failed the onboarding process. There's too many vulnerabilities with the software. There's too many reports of things going wrong in terms of data leakage, etc. Therefore, we're not comfortable to approve this. It's rejected. You need to be making sure you're doing this with any open source software. You know, a lot of organizations provide admin only rights to people that need admin rights, so other people can't actually download and install software. They also have things like software centers or software catalogs where people have to go in and request that software be added, installed, purchased, etc. Add the open source software into this as well, so that you've got that control, you've got that visibility, and you can manage it throughout its life cycle and work with your information security teams. The last thing you want to be doing is installing open source software that isn't updated and managed properly and correctly by the developers, and then suddenly get a critical security alert and a critical security error. Your InfoSec team calling you in the middle of the night saying, ITAM, why the heck have you approved this piece of software? It's just got onto one of our servers and is taking all of our money. You don't want that kind of scenario to happen. So when you're onboarding, or even retrospectively now going back and looking through all of your open source software, run it by your information security teams, get their thoughts, get their opinions, make sure it's safe. And if it's not worth the risk, uninstall it, remove it from your portfolio of software, and remove it from all of your machines that have it installed. And potentially block the website as well, so people can't download it again moving forward. Reason number 4 is your corporate responsibility and ESG. We recently just did a webinar all about hardware asset management and green IT, but we also focused in there as well about green software and how ITAM can help support green software. Same concept with open source. Is it being created sustainably? Is it being maintained sustainably? There's all these things now to consider, again, not only with the commercial software, but open source software as well. How much carbon emissions is it outputting when it's being created, developed, or even used? How much energy is it consuming on your devices? As organizations are put under even more pressure to be ESG compliant, to be, really seen to be promoting that whole green IT, green software, green ops methodology and mantra, and also promoting that they are sustainable, that they do have that corporate responsibility brain on them, and they are taking their outputs and how they're impacting the planet seriously, and what changes they're making. Again, like you would with any other kind of software, and you are trying to drive that corporate sustainability. What energy does it consume? What are the carbon emissions? Is there any data on what the development and upkeep of this software does from an emission standpoint as well? And what does that then mean for your own organization's corporate responsibility and your environmental sustainability as well? And for Mumbo number 5, reason number 5, my hand was too big for the screen there, we'll go back there. Number 5. Believe it or not, there is a lot of open source frameworks used in AI technologies. There is a lot of open source that is driving a lot of the artificial intelligence AI platforms that you may even be using on a day-to-day basis. So ITAM needs to be aware of the open source used in the AI platforms that they're using. You may also be subscribed and paying a license for specific AI platforms. But then how does that impact the licensing model? Are there any contractual obligations for the usage of that open source software in the AI technologies that ITAM and your organization needs to be aware of? Because that may require additional licenses and additional costings, etc., to use certain parts of the AI platform. And yet there are a lot of AI frameworks that are built and powered and use open source software that may impact the licensing, that may impact the terms in which that you are actually using that AI framework or that AI technology. So AI licensing is something that obviously ITAM should be tracking. Again, if you've got instances of Copilot, ChatGPT, etc., you're buying it, you're paying for it, you're subscribing to it, that's another license, that's another contract that ITAM should be managing anyway. Just like with everything else, there are risks involved in there, spending too much, spending too little, buying the wrong type of license, buying the wrong subscription, not managing users correctly, not managing the life cycle correctly, etc. But then also throwing in any open source components that may impact how you are using that particular AI piece of software or that AI subscription. There's a lot of AI driven licensing models as well now for new technologies that are coming out, the big boom in AI, all with different licensing models, different parameters. Thankfully, a lot of the major ones run on per user base, which is quite easy to manage from an ITAM perspective. But other AI platforms, based on the number of asks that you're asking the AI platform to do, like number of codes you develop, line codes, etc. But there are all these different models. So please be aware of how open source is used in your artificial intelligence subscriptions, platforms, whatever you're using. Factor that into your general processes on how you're managing those AI subscriptions. And if you are not buying any subscriptions, but you can see your user downloading or using AI platforms via the web link, for example, or they are downloading the free version, you need to be tracking that. You need to be understanding, again, going back to working with security, again, going back to all of the points we mentioned previously, these need to be onboarded correctly. They need to be approved. And if they're not approved, they're removed and blacklisted, red listed, whatever phrase you use within your organization, that they can no longer be used, no longer deployed, the web links blocked, the downloads blocked. You're safe. You're secure, you've done your bit. So there are 5 really high level reasons as to why open source, I believe, is going to play a much bigger role in ITAM as the years go on, and as open source software develops and as commercial licensable software gets even more expensive. There are some fantastic benefits in using open source software in favor of commercial software, especially obviously from a budgeting standpoint. But like I said, a lot of this open source software is really good. It can do the job. It really does do what it says on the tin, and in some cases is better than the software that you've paying a license for, whether that's hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a year, a month, a week, who knows, however you've licensed the software that you've replaced with open source. There's some really good stuff out there, but you have to be secure. You need to make sure that this open source software follows your same processes, your ITAM processes for onboarding, looking at security, managing any subscriptions, understanding the compliance, and understanding the CSR and ESG responsibilities as well for your organization. Should be treated no differently. Please do not just ignore it because it's open source and you think it's free. Still needs to be managed, tracked, onboarded, all of the above, like you would with your commercial software. So hopefully I've given you some ideas as to why I think open source is going to be big over the next few years, especially in the ITAM space. More reason for us to add value. Like I said in my previous webinar, we are just adding value left, right and center, adding all of this stuff in. And if we can really focus on the open source software from a security standpoint, compliance standpoint and AI standpoint as well, which open source is already under our banner anyway. It's software, we've been managing it for years. There's just different elements of it to manage now, then even better, because it shows just how much value ITAM could bring to an organization. Before we go, please do not forget to like and subscribe down there. Check out that open source big interview we did with Rebecca Horton as well. We go into way more details and way more depth on open source and the gotchas, the risks, what you need to know, etc. Otherwise, really hope you enjoyed it. And until next week, as always, happy ITAMing.